So, welcome everybody to another Twitter Spaces powered by Neo Tokyo News. This is a collaboration with Neo Tokyo. Obviously, you are aware of the Interlinked Spaces. We are joining hands, data streams, connecting our minds, tying Neo Tokyo together in true NT fashion. We have Brian D. Evans, Thomas Gronnevik, I hope I didn't butcher your name, and obviously Hustlepedia. In this space, we're discussing the idea of bringing Web3 to the masses. A quick little introduction if you have been living under a rock. Brian has his history in online advertising, marketing, and consultancy space, where his agency made the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. He's also the founder of Affinity.xyz, which is a networking mastermind for creators and more, among the various other things that he's involved in. Currently dipping his toes, to say the least, into Web3, and I'm pretty sure he's doing a very good job at that. We have Thomas, who is an award-winning CEO running the powerhouse known as Wagner.gg. He has been featured in GQ's magazine, probably because of his physique, since he has a personal trainer background. But for someone who was in GQ South Africa, to not visit South Africa to see Shamsi is a bit of a shame, but I'm going to let that slide for now. Wagner's a growing gaming social media movement where brands and players can join in to connect with one another and grow their network and gaming skills as a whole. Thomas is also one of the founding members of Affinity alongside several other citizens, so it's great to see powerful minds interlinking yet again. And of course, we have our usual expert, Hustlepedia. I don't need to say more. Hustlepedia was introduced last, but we know exactly where he stands on the leaderboards. He is your go-to gaming metaverse NFT guy. And welcome everybody to the spaces. Let's get this thing started.
Thanks for having us. Wow, I felt like it's a fight announcement. I feel like we're going to fight each other now. Fighting out of the blue corner. I love your voice.
Thank you.
He's just missing the let's get ready to rumble with announcement phrase.
All right, guys. So how's it going? How's everything? I want to hear what you guys have been up to lately. Fill the people in about what's going on in your work lives in Web3. What's popping? What's happening?
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in. It's going great. Building Affinity Collective. It's kind of a spin on Proof Collective, private invite only kind of group. So we took the opposite approach, as opposed to doing like a public mint or something like that. It's just all referral only. And just trying to curate slowly a good group of people. We're actually putting together like a newbie-oriented program as well, called Affinity Accelerator that'll teach. Because I've always noticed there's a problem of people say, well, where do I learn everything about Web3 and crypto and blockchain? And I always scratch my head of kind of where to send them. Aside from YouTube shows and things like that, but they, for a more focused curriculum kind of thing. So we're kind of putting that together, building some video games. One's called Alpha District. It's kind of this narrative thriller. Star Wars-esque kind of metaverse world with mini game experiences in it. So really heavily focused on building video games and just investing in the space heavily. I'm not doing so much. My marketing agency is more just consulting and investing now. So really focused on, I've done hundreds of investments in, the crypto Web3 space. So just really focused on investing and just evangelizing projects, doing some of that with the Animoca and Mochaverse. And just others to do that. Also, I'm going to be on a mainstream TV show. The goal is to hit 50 million viewers on that show. It's like a Shark Tank, meets The Apprentice kind of show called The Next Crypto Gem. So that should be quite interesting as well. Looking forward to those things and just spreading the word more about Web3 and getting more people on board. Really.
Yeah, very good. I do notice that you have been pushing Web3 adoption for a minute now and doing a very good job at that. And I also read about the show, and it's so cool to see that you're pushing full steam ahead despite the bear market and despite the negative sentiment. What about Thomas? What have you been up to, my friend? How's things going over your side?
It's been good. We just wrapped up 2022, and obviously most of my time working with building out Wasder and building out the company and adding the staff and keep building the product. It's absolutely. 2022 was ridiculous. It was an incredible year for us. We initially wanted to just make sure that we had a proof of concept out of what kind of the product vision will be, but realistically all of our metrics has been so much better than what we anticipated, which means that the stuff that we have behind the scenes that we want to roll out is makes us even more excited because we know what the reaction to those things will be. Obviously, most of my time goes to that, but also spend a lot of my time making investments, speaking, trying to make sure that we can create the best possible impact for both the industry and also, but more importantly, for the consumers and the players that are in it, which is extraordinarily enjoyable. But it's a lot of work. I mean, you get the 15-hour day, 7 days a week now for a year straight, or actually several years straight. So at some point, I might need to pick up a couple of hours of sleep, but we'll see how that goes. Probably in like 2025.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, for somebody who's trying to hit 150 million users in the next 5 years or less, I guess. I mean, I'm sure that's the criteria that you have to meet, right?
I mean, it's interesting because again, if we look at the metrics for the last year, I mean, we've probably split tested close to 30,000 different ad sets on probably like 1,000 different user psychology profiles. We have about 1 million users, but out of those, we're sitting to close to 500,000 monthly active. And which means that considering that we've added them over like 18 months, the retention rate is extraordinary. We get to learn a lot, and it means we can also, I mean, we can add once we have all the funds ready that we want to have ready to scale, and we're officially going out with who the investors are, that allows us to scale, which is going to happen really, really soon, then we can start really, really ramping up. But the key thing for us is to make sure that we create a product that adds value to both the players and the users and the games and the ecosystem and all the different companies making great solutions. I mean, what Wasder is we're more of an ecosystem that connects all the dots rather than trying to build each individual solution to the best on our own. So we don't really compete with anyone. We just tie everything together, and it seems the users like what we do, and it seems we add value to games, and it's fun. That really surprised me the most is that we've been able to show that we can give Web3 games, like blockchain heavy Web3 games, to traditional mainstream gamers and have them be as excited, actually more engaged and more excited than games like Apex, games like Call of Duty. And you see this narrative publicly that, players don't want Web3 games, and it's just not true. It's in how you deliver to them and how you talk about it, and what you present to them is actually the defining factor. So it's fun to be able to look at that data and learn from it, and then use that knowledge to help game developers evolve and do more right things. It's about value adding, and then I get to look like half competent because the people are incredible, and I get to drink and not seem like an idiot, which is nice.
No, but that's a very insightful take into the entire approach, because yeah, you have to cater to all aspects of actually building a sustainable company, where you have to appeal to Web2 customers when it comes to games, and obviously Hustlepedia can speak a little bit more on the gaming side of things. So Hustle, what's happening on your side, and what do you think about what Thomas just said?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and dive right into it. Really been just focused building out more utility for TTOO in this bear market, right? We've had a lot of NFT access, and for our investor side, we've had tons of gaming access. We had the champion of the tournament for the Collider Craftworks from our collection using one of our Collider assets, which was fantastic. We had 3 players place top 9. We have the AI Arena competition coming around the corner, and some pretty spicy esports partnerships coming up too. So that's going to be fun. We're also bringing out more stuff for investors. We recently partnered up with Seedify, so we're going to be partnering up more so on the SNFTs side of things, some pre-sales potentially on that side, some early access on some things they're doing in the ecosystem. We also have some really cool things coming up for the people who are eligible, of course, in the regions that you can do so, to be able to potentially have early investment opportunities on IGOs as well. So that's going to be coming pretty soon for TTO holders. Really stoked about that, as well as looking for our next treasury acquisition, which is something we've really been sitting on for a bit. Last week, we accumulated a couple of Vulcan Forge nodes, so we're really just kind of, pondering what we're going to do next, and that's as far as TTOO goes. We're also bringing in a coaching program where we're going to be bringing in high level minds, not only in the Web3 space, but in business to come, speak with our holders and kind of just lay out some value on, credit building, real estate. There's a lot of people who want to get involved in Web3, but what about the Web3 people who want to get involved in real world businesses and want to go build an actual company on that's something not to do with crypto? So we're going to try to bring more education on that as well, because I feel like that's maybe a little understated in the space. So we're trying to deliver that to our holders and really drive more business models behind the project. So laser focused on that, and some education things we're doing with helping people grow in their personal brand. We're also opening up a gaming advisory service with TTOO. We're working with a couple of projects already, and that benefits our treasury. And we're also just being able to give them actual real feedback on how to get more players into their games and how to figure out their marketing strategies to get more mass appeal. So it's been really fun to work with more projects on an official front, and that's about a wrap. And of course, YouTube content. So that's about a wrap of what's been going on and what's being built behind the scenes with me right now.
Definitely great to hear from all you guys on this space here. And we're going to get into this whole thing about bringing Web3 to the masses, right? So especially with Thomas and Brian, you both have a background in traditional business. Why Web3? Why branch into something that's unregulated and risky? What do you see as the potential growth of this space? And how do you see it as different than from traditional media and markets? Maybe start with Brian on that one.
Interestingly, on the unregulated point, I think that's an interesting topic. Me and Thomas may actually disagree on this one, so this could be interesting. Because I actually think, what does government do well? Not a lot of things, nothing exceptionally well. And I saw it with crypto early on that, when government gets their hands on things, it's just things kind of tend to go downhill. Look at this FTX debacle, right? It's just, all the regulators were literally in meetings with them and just missed the whole thing. It's just the classic story over and over again. So I'm just so fed up with sort of the old world, right? I'm just all in on decentralization. And not that we have no regulation. I don't think that's the point either. But certain industries, especially, film and TV is one big time for me. A friend of mine, Rick Dugdale, if you're not following him, check him out. He did the first NFT movie with Anthony Hopkins. He's a big player in Hollywood, works regularly with Lionsgate and those kind of things. We're currently building this platform called Tinsel, which is basically a distribution platform for Web3 films. So a lot of video games will be interested in this as well. If you're building a video game, they might be able to help turn the games into movies and things like that. But these industries have no exposure to Web3 whatsoever, and just are very ripe for it. Look at the whole thing with music distribution, since Napster and all that, right? We clearly saw that there was such a demand for it, but now with this technology, we can actually incentivize people to share digital assets. Maybe movies and music in the future is you have an incentive to share it, not that it's illegal to share it because of copyright laws and but now there's an incentive to do it. I'm just shifting everything I have to Web3. I have a publication called Influencive that was a Web2 influencer platform that had nothing to do with Web3. And I'm fully on board. That's a entirely Web3 publication now. It's actually Neo Tokyo news writers are entirely writing all the articles at the moment. Block editor, shout out, doing that, and some of the others here. On the content side, but video games as well is a huge one, because I think that's where we're going to get the hundreds of millions of users for a variety of reasons. I'm a gamer. I've played games for a long time, and I've always just scratched my head of why is this in-world gold in-world only? And why can't I do nothing? Why is it illegal to do anything with my game characters and my assets? So I really think that that's a huge industry that's going to wake up to Web3, and we're seeing it in the East. We're seeing it in other, we haven't seen it as much in the West yet, but it's happening. It's starting to slowly happen. People are realizing that, hey, I could have my characters as an NFT, and there's all these benefits. So, I'm waiting for multiplayer games to start using smart contracts and automate all the rules and, all that kind of stuff. And the quest to be all on chain, I think that's going to be an obvious one in 10 years that people are going to look back and say, duh, this was coming. And, different areas of gaming for sure. More than anything, I just think that it's clear, from COVID and from before and from old financial issues, that people just want this more and more, and that you're not really, other than people doing it for sensationalism, you're not really finding big detractors that are, standing up against this, people are really saying, yeah, this makes sense. It's not just financial. It's not just about making money. It just makes sense. So I'm on board from that standpoint. And yeah, just fully down the rabbit hole of pushing everything I have over towards Web3. So
yeah, and I think this narrative of the fact that blockchain allows you to own your own data, which is not something that we push as often as we push the idea of digital assets and this and that. I think that's the core of the functionality that we bring. It's the fact that you can own your data, you can tokenize, and there's ownership, and that's a need that, like you said, in the future people are going to think, oh, duh, why didn't we think of it? But I'm very interested to see what Thomas has to say with respect to sort of the disagreement side of the opinion, but also why he chooses to get into the Web3 world.
So I actually agree with a lot of the stuff that Brian says. Where my disagreement typically comes isn't necessarily, I agree that the government sucks at most things, but that has to do with, I think, the value creation and from people generally come from people rather than state. I think where the disagreement comes is primarily around regulation. Regulation is inherently a good thing. I think a great example, obviously, is all the crap that SPF did now. If there was no regulation, then that would be completely fine. It would be completely legal. Regulation is just meant to protect the masses. That doesn't mean that I think that I trust what the SEC does. It doesn't mean that I trust the regulators to make the right regulation. That's a completely different discussion for me. But I think in any industry, you need to have. Everybody talks about self-imposed standards. I agree. The problem is that you need to have consequences for breaking those standards. And that's what regulation is. I mean, imagine the nuclear industry without having any regulation. Imagine pharma without having regulation. You think that the people wouldn't abuse that there was no consequence of breaking the standards? Of course they would. So what I think that's where my primary view is when it comes to that. When it comes to why Web3, I mean, we went into Web3 because of the technology. It wasn't a philosophical thing for us. My job and what I've tried to do in all business I do is to create a business and products and services that add value to people. For me, when I looked at the gaming industry, there's so many things that can be solved from a user behavior perspective using blockchain technology that just create a better user experience for the players. I'll give you a great example. So for 30 years, we've had digital items in games, right? You've had skins in Fortnite, you have skins in Overwatch, you have skins in Dota, you have skins in Counter-Strike, you have characters, you have items, you have your FIFA player cards in FIFA. This isn't new to anybody. These are all just digital items and JPEGs and files and whatever phraseology you want to use. That has been the case forever. The big issue that you've seen for gamers is that your stuff is locked inside of an ecosystem. Meaning if that game dies, like Star Wars Galaxies did once upon a time, you lose all of those items that you've worked for, that you've played for, that you've put in a lot of effort to achieve. You lose those. You have the memories in your head, but you have nothing to show for it. And not only that, from a behavioral perspective, if I want to take a look at what is all my gaming stuff, where, what do I have in the different games, then I need to use all the different platforms that is connected to that specific game. So I might have to use 20, 30, 40, 50 different solutions to take a look at this stuff. It's really hard to keep an overview. So what blockchain does is that it allows us to have one application, which is a wallet. I get to keep my things. I get to have an overview of my things. I get to keep them with me, take them with me, control them. I mean, Brian and Hustle both speak about ownership. Ownership is essential in a philosophical perspective. I mean, it comes down to ownership. But if you ask a 15-year-old, I mean, a Gen Z player, they don't give a crap about ownership because they don't understand what that means. What they do understand is the lack of control that they have. And it's a little bit like, Hustle buying a car or Johnny buying a car and then having to go deliver the key to me when he's not driving it. So when he wants to drive his car, he has to come to me and then he has to ask me for the keys. So I got to give him the keys. Then he can go out driving. And when he comes back, he has to go give me the keys back. I mean, theoretically, it's still his car. It's just not going to feel that way, right? So in these games, you still own the item theoretically. It's just you have no access to it. You have no control of it. You can't really do with it what you want. And that's something that the consumers notice. So for us, choosing blockchain technologies allows us to build these type of better user experiences with a technology that is much easier for us to collaborate with games about. Because again, what we build is an ecosystem where we want to bring in all the games, all the game developers, all the studios. And we do that because we put the consumer in the centerpiece, which means that instead of having to use 50 different code bases in order to interact with or to work with 50 different games, or in our case hundreds of games already, it would be extraordinarily expensive. Instead, we just use one tech, one framework, one ecosystem. It's the same for the currency, right? So we chose to use a cryptocurrency not because of the ideological, speculative price appreciation stuff that has to do with the currency. It's actually quite the opposite. Every game has always had a digital currency. I mean, the reason you don't use dollars in Candy Crush or dollars in FIFA or dollars in whatever else game you want is just because the moment you attach a financial branding to the currency, it has a different meaning to the consumer. So you brand it, you make it playful, you make it fun to interact with it when it's a digital currency in order to make sure that it has a different meaning when you spend it. It's more about the items and the experiences and the things you can do with it rather than the value of it. And I think honestly, that's the biggest mistake Web3 games makes, is that they have a belief that the audience cares about the price appreciation. They care about the financial value. They don't. I mean, we have 500,000 players every single month in several different age groups and demographics to collect this data on. The vast majority of players don't want to think about price. That's not why they play. The people who care about price is a vastly different demographic. So if you break the player base down into basically 6 or technically 9, but 6 different character types, you have the indie players, you have the core players, you have the trend players, you have the casual gamers, and you have the performance gamers. And the only player group that kind of cares about financial stuff, these all have different psychological motivations to play. And I can go into depth about all of these. But within performance gamers, you have esporters, you have streamers, and you have what we call guild players. Esporters primarily play to be better than others, and then a very, very small percentage of them are good enough to where there's a financial aspect. Streamers care about fame and status, and then financials comes secondary to that. The yield players are the ones who care about making money. The problem with that specific group of players is that they don't really care about the game loops, the experiences, and all that stuff. They're willing to cheat the systems, optimize the systems to make money, which is counterproductive to what all the other player groups does. So I think if you focus on what user experiences this technology can give to users, you can onboard, because it does solve real problems, and it can make a much better user experience because you can let players participate in the value creation of the economy, in item creation, in experience creations, in doing stuff with others. But and blockchain allows for that in a great, incredible way. But it's the moment you start focusing on the price appreciation stuff, you're going to lose out the vast majority of traditional players, because it's not why they play.
I do want to say I really love what Thomas mentioned. I think that the entire process is very, very deeply thought out, and I'm sure a lot of the depth of the thinking is attributed to a lot of data collected over the years or over the months. But I wanted to circle back to what Brian said earlier, and I think it sort of ties in with the topic for today's discussion, which is bringing Web3 to the masses. And Brian mentioned the importance of education. Now, we're aware of the Influencive, which is sort of this powerhouse where Web3 news or announcements live. And that is sort of the way I guess Brian's Web3 engine is pushing education and adoption. And Hustlepedia, on the other hand, is on more on the media creation side, where he's pushing YouTube. So the question I want to pose is, firstly to Hustle, and then I want to circle it to Brian, is with the importance of education, how do we scale sort of educating new and existing Web3 gamers or users to just be on top of everything, to adopt new technologies, to learn, to be competent and not be scared to jump in, and with all these tokens and all these prices and all these buzzwords, how do we make sure that transition from Web2 gaming to Web3 gaming, or perhaps just Web2 to Web3 in general, is easier via the tool of education?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, we're so early in this niche that if you go look up the search volume behind crypto gaming, NFT gaming right now, it's very, very low. And the sentiment behind the industry, even with the recent, Gala Games kind of sent the crypto gaming market upwards when they acquired a studio, added 20 million users, as they mentioned themselves, as well as the market just trending upwards in general. We've seen a general increase in sentiment overall, but our industry is just so small right now. And one reason is there aren't a lot of creators that are day in, day out creating within the industry. And I think there's so many smart people within Web3, within the NFT gaming space, within just crypto. And I think that there's more than just crypto Twitter. I think there's more than just posting threads. I think it's a really good way to get yourself out there, add value to the marketplace. If you have something to add, educate, play games, talk about projects, go over tokenomics. If you have a specialty, absolutely get out there and create content. It can only help you grow your personal brand, which can therefore grow your business. So I think the power of content, long form or short form. And just take an hour or two out of your day. You don't need the best equipment to start. I started with my laptop webcam and my iPhone headphones, and you just gotta, you can go from there. I think a lot of people just make the excuse not to start, but if you have value to add to a marketplace, or you have an expertise in this industry, I think it's a fantastic way to get yourself out there, and that will lead to more mass adoption. I mean, YouTube's the second biggest search engine in the world behind Google, and I think that obviously, we all know the power of TikTok, short forms going really crazy on IG Reels. There's so many different ways you can get out there, add exposure to the marketplace, add exposure to the industry, and help this thing go mainstream. And I think, it's really hard to become a Nick Merckx or an XQC or a FaZe Swag of the traditional gaming industry, but there's definitely a lot of room to become that in the Web3 gaming industry. So go out there, assert yourself, and build a brand. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I'm happy to jump in on that topic as well. I think also what we forget sometimes is that, and I completely agree with that. That's really good advice. And also what we forget sometimes is that the virality of anything really ever in life starts with one-to-one. Starts with one person telling somebody else about something, telling a friend, telling a stranger. In some cases, when you text a friend about something, that's even more powerful in many ways. Until you have that larger audience. So that's where the education starts, and it really becomes about storytelling from there. And it's really a call to action of all of us here. It's now kind of on us to create the narratives, tell the tales of Web3, what this means for the world, across different industries, and beyond my own projects. I'm obviously out there evangelizing this, even one-on-one though. That's the thing. It's like, and sometimes I'll hear these false narratives or these strange things that people say, and I always push back, because you'll hear people say, well, I don't buy Bitcoin because I don't understand it, or I don't want to use Ethereum, it's too complicated. And I always push back because I ask them, do you know how the internet works? Like, can you explain to me how the internet works? But you use it every day. Do you know how Twitter works, or you just use it because it's useful and it has functions that you see value in? So. And I'm not saying there's not a place to understand what blockchain is, or what Ethereum is, or Bitcoin is. I think that, if you're a developer, or if you want to build things, that's great. And maybe many people here that are early obviously will want to maybe understand some more of the details. But for more of the mainstream people that we're going to talk to, everybody here, it's on us to to tell them these things and say, look, you really want to know what it does. It's really more about that. And it's there's other things too from there, of course. It's really about the permissionless nature of everything, right? It's I always tell people, I've had many cases. I don't know if people have here had these situations. You walk into a bank and you get grilled by some bank manager about sending a wire transfer or something internationally, or even locally, or your account gets flagged, and that just doesn't happen in crypto. If you're using, your own wallets and whatnot, right? You don't need someone's permission to send your own money. Whereas in sort of the traditional banking world, we need permission, and that's screwed up. We shouldn't need that. I understand blacklists, and I think there should be a place for OFAC lists and stuff like that of bad actors. That has its place, but that can be more on the blacklist side. You have a certain set of addresses that get blacklisted that have done something wrong. Great, fine. But generally, we want control of that. But really, it comes back to just everybody here, just those one-on-one conversations of telling people about what it can do and what it's capable of, and which industries are potentially going to be disrupted by this. So I really think it starts with those one-on-one interactions. So I tell people, even before you've built if you build your audiences and stuff like that, yeah, do it in a way that can reach lots of people. But there's a lot of power in just being able to tell anybody about some of this technology and what it's capable of, and what they're for business owners, how they can get into Web3 and what they should be looking at. I think there's very few industries that can't benefit from this, and many will. It's just a matter of time. We know people are going to do it across various industries, and they're going to benefit in massive ways. It's just more of a question of who's going to do it.
So I actually agree 100% with what Hustlepedia and Brian says. I think the distinction for me, which is, I think it's super, super interesting, because Brian kind of pointed it out, he says, do you know how the internet works? Because education is crucial and awareness is crucial. Making content is crucial. But when he uses that argument, what I think is really interesting is that when you ask someone, why do you use the internet? You don't start teaching them how the internet works. What you tell them about is, why do you use the internet? Because it solves stuff that you want to do, right? It solves the things that you're after solving. And you don't really try to explain to them how it works. And I think that's the mistake that we're doing in a lot of these educational parts, is that we're trying to explain to people how it works rather than the stuff that your listeners really wants to do. So when it comes to education, I think we should teach and educate game developers, game makers, about why they should be using Web3 technologies and content that are aimed at business owners, as Brian says, as game developers. Why should you use blockchain? Because it solves this, and this solution for your end consumer. It allows you to use this, and this business model, which is actually more profitable for you, and allows the players to participate in that value creation, which is more profitable for both sides. I agree with him 100%. But I think when we're talking about how do you get the masses to adopt it, how do you get the players to play these games, that is the wrong approach. What we need to do when it comes to content there is to tell them, here's this amazing game, and it has this game loop, and it does this mechanic, and it looks like this, and here's the story, and here are the really, really cool items. Here's a really cool sword, and this sword can evolve. This sword can get better and better. You can take this with you. So outside of your account, you can go show it to your friends. You can pull your statistics from your games into this sword, and you need to talk about it on the premise of the consumer, from the wants that the consumers has. And I think that's what a lot of these Web3 games do wrong, is because they talk about the business model, they talk about the technology, and the user. It's a little bit like me trying to teach you how the internet works, rather than me trying to teach you, here's where you find what you want on the internet. So I think we need to split the communication. Are we talking to the web developers or the game developers? Then we need to talk about tech and business model and pricing and all of that stuff. Or are we talking to the player? Then the education and the content that Hustlepedia makes should be about, here's why this game is freaking great. Excuse my language.
No, 100%. I just quickly want to chime in on that, because we've had these discussions at length for quite some time on a lot of spaces. And, the problem is twofold, because if you try, I think it's a marketing angle, which is probably what Zehi is going to speak on after this. Because how you present your product to the market makes a very big difference on A, how the market perceives it, and B, how the product is actually sold and scaled. So, in Web3, what we often do is, especially in Web3 gaming, we try and champion this idea that we have this technology and it's innovative and this and that. And we forget the fact that games are played because games are fun. And I think that is what you're trying to get to, is the fact that, we need to, when we're marketing to gamers, we need to market to actual gamers that enjoy the game and tell them how great the game is. And, if when we're marketing to opportunists, then I guess it's a different thing. But Zehi, go on.
Yeah, I was just, seeing that everyone up here has a lot of experience in marketing and a lot of success in that. It's very related to education, but it's a bit different. And we've seen so much, covering all these different projects coming into the Web3 space. A lot of these Web2 projects totally flop. They try and do it like they do in Web2, and they just, have very little success. And then on the other side, the projects that are really successful in Web3 often are not very successful bringing in new people. Where's the overlap? Like, how different is this approach to marketing to Web3 audiences versus, the normies or the normal audiences? And how can it be packaged in a way that can appeal to the Web3 audience, but also bring in new people?
The overlap or the differences are extreme because it has to do with the motivations. I mean, and again, luckily for me, I can prove this with data, but the difference is extreme because when you're talking to a player, what you need to talk about is the game loops, the items, the story, the lore, the look and feel. Can you be better than others? Can you compete? Can you not compete? Are you social? Because those are the reasons they play. When you're talking to someone who's financially driven, you need to, or innovatively driven, you need to use that type of language and story. The problem with that is that type of story is a turnoff for the players. But if we look at the most engaging games in our platform, obviously, now I'm going to read directly from the database. Now I'm cheating, but obviously, Garena, Minecraft, Garena, Free Fire, Minecraft, Fortnite, PUBG, GTA, Apex, obviously score on the top. But the funny part is we have a Web2 audience, and the next games on the list is Gods of Asgard, Compete, Bit Hotel, Kitsumun, which are Web3 games. The only difference is if you look at how they've communicated to our audience, they haven't said anything about the tech. Nothing. They haven't talked about the tech. They haven't talked about, slightly hints of NFTs. But what they talk about is the game loops and what you can do with the different items and the swords and the weapons and the characters. And the players eat it up. They're like, holy shit, these guys are cool. And they're so much more communicative than most web developers or normal game developers are. We love it. And then we see that the moment they start talking about NFTs and technology, the engagement just crashes. It just disappears immediately. So I think the packaging is everything when it comes to that audience. So are you talking to someone who's financially driven and a Web3 person? Then highlight that. Highlight the business model, the tokenomics, the tech. Or are you talking to a player? Then highlight the game loops, highlight the graphics, the story, the audience. That's
Yeah, to piggyback that as well, it's kind of some investment alpha from investors that I've learned over the years, and integrate myself into some of my decisions. If you're investing in the space, whether you're literally a VC or you're an angel investor or you're just buying NFTs or crypto or whatever, look at their marketing materials and see if they're targeting sort of the right audiences, as Thomas is alluding to. Many times, we saw it early on with crypto. We saw projects like pitching to like a mainstream audience, but then just getting lost in the weeds and technical terms and using keywords and things like that. We're seeing it now with AI. It's AI XYZ on the blockchain, green energy on the blockchain, water on the blockchain, just anything. We saw that in the crypto days, and we're starting to see it a little bit with the Web3 space in general. Even video games are doing it a little bit, and just look at their terminology. Think about who they're targeting with this material. If it's for a consumer audience, are these consumer terms, or are they talking more to investors? Or if it's investment materials, are they getting lost in consumer terms? So it's kind of a good indicator if they're like on the right track, if they're thinking about it from the right perspective, and a good predictor of success. That obviously people can change their ways when they realize these things and bring in, new leaders and stuff like that. But it is a good thing to be aware of, are they talking to the right audiences about the right thing or not? And sometimes people can get stuck in their own ways and get an ego about something, or the other classic mistake is they get stuck trying to constantly update their investors, but they're really trying to build an audience. So, I've seen it with a few video games where they're sending out kind of like investor updates to like their regular audience, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense where they're trying to appease to investors, but then they're not getting players, they're not getting action on their NFT side because the messaging is just mixed. It doesn't make a lot of sense to the end user. So keep an eye on that for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think the way that you convey your message goes such a long way. And I want Hustle to weigh in on this a little bit because, he's been making YouTube videos for the longest time. And I think the way that he expresses himself from, an investment standpoint, from the standpoint of telling people how fun a particular game is or how, innovative particular technologies, I think he's very good at moving his pitch and controlling the way that he portrays the message. So Hustle, how do you think that the aspect of marketing or the aspect of the correct positioning of your messaging plays a role in how effective you are in putting your message across?
Oh, and yeah, whenever it comes to the topic of the conversation today of bringing Web3 to the masses, it's 100% critical that you take these really hard concepts and try to make them as simple as possible for the user or the listener or the viewer to understand. Because you can't expect a new gamer to come in and see, let's just say, for example, Gala Games Grit, like it's going to be on Epic Games Store, Battle Royale, kind of looks like just like a remake of like PUBG meets H1Z1, let's just say. So let's just say a gamer who's a really big Battle Royale guy sees that. And they hear of the potential of like, I want to play this game. But then they get involved and they start realizing they like own their assets. They don't want to, like, learning what a smart contract is, learning what the heck a MetaMask is. You can't send those assets to your Coinbase type of thing, right? Like, so you have to kind of pivot and educate people on exactly how these assets work and try to simplify these really hard concepts to just simply, you are earning an asset. You can, give them the step-by-steps of how to, get to those assets if you want to. It's simply a layer of technology on top for gamers who want to use it. It should not be, oh, you have to create a wallet to play this game, and it should never be that. So I think that simplifying the message of how to get involved in these things and how the technology benefits both the gamers and the developers, right? Like the developers, I mean, we see Call of Duty come in and sweep billions out of the space every single year with a new development and a new release, but you don't own anything. And then the microtransactions that they squeeze out of their customers, and then those don't move over to the next game. So it's a ridiculous cycle of things that Web3 and the technology can fix. And if you can just explain it and the benefits of the player owning their assets and then the developer being able to monetize their sales and their transactions of their assets beyond one touch point, I think it's a no-brainer. And just simplify the message. That would be my memo.
These are all definitely good points. I think sometimes, in this space, we get a little too micro-focused, sometimes we need to like step back and look at the bigger picture, because if we're really going to get mass adoption, we have to look at these dominant social discourses around the space and get strategic on how to kind of combat them. Right. I think, we've said that governments are not good at most things, and centralized things tend to have a lot of problems, but they do tend to be pretty good at dominating the social discourses. We've seen like even in the US, the Republican Party find ways to just make climate change sound like it was a very uncool thing and, not real and all this stuff just by getting certain terms and certain narratives, to really go strong. There's some narratives around Web3 and crypto that it's, just for money launderers, just for scammers, and then there's this whole concept that we hear a lot of people here have already mentioned it. It's big in Neo Tokyo. Becker and Elio are always pushing this, and you Hustlepedia about, gaming is going to be how it really comes into the mainstream, or will be one of the main vehicles to bring it into the mainstream. At the same time, I mean, what's the dominant social discourse around gaming? If you look at the general society, I don't know, it's a bunch of young, lazy people getting our kids addicted to screens. I'm not sure that that's really gonna be it. I know, Brian, you mentioned that there was, it's gonna, or it might have been Thomas or both of you, that it's gonna impact all industries and really help so many different elements of society. I think we need to get a little bit more specific on that and like how it could help society in different ways and different elements of industry. Do you guys have any thoughts or ideas of like how to attack this on a larger scale level in terms of the dominant social discourse around the industry?
Yeah, one thing right off the bat too is, you're talking about, first of all, you're talking about the social discourse. And let's be honest, look at this Twitter Spaces, look at the Neo Tokyo citizens that are represented here. What have we seen before that has really brought people together as strong as some of these NFT communities with this technology, with the ethos of this space? Communities really, and the leaders of those communities too, especially, are really the new influencers. It's going to become that more and more. And it's interesting. People always think about, well, they think about 10,000, 10K PFP project, right? That's not a random number, just by the way. That comes from a concept called 1,000 true fans, that if 10%, is 1,000, it's 1,000 true fans. And if you have 1,000 true fans of something, you can basically build some massive infrastructure, massive project, massive communities, massive anything. Look at Neo Tokyo as a perfect example of that. You probably have, well, more than 1,000 at this point. Obviously 1,000 is the baseline number of having 1,000 really hardcore true fans that do all your stuff and buy all your things and follow you everywhere. And then the number grows from there. And we create these massive social communities in the Web3 space. And it's really never happened before. You'd occasionally see something before. I was around very early in the influencer movement with my Influencive platform and saw like how social media platforms were built literally from the early days of Facebook all the way to today, and what they did. And there was never anything like this before. We saw with like Bored Apes early on, and Punks and now many other projects, how these communities came together in such a unique way. So that can't be discounted of what the cultural and the social element of Web3 is really all about, is bringing people together, connecting in different ways. You can have no network, join a group like Neo Tokyo or Affinity now and many other proof, Moonbirds, etc., and immediately have access to a who's who list of amazing people, builders, really. And you couldn't do that in Web 2. Web 2 was like more old school networking and, go to events and introductions. And yeah, that still is relevant today, but it's just a whole new level to today. So it really connects people on a whole other level. I saw Thomas there. Maybe you want to jump in on the other stuff, but I just wanted to point that part out.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about, you mentioned the games have kind of been considered the loner sitting in the basement. I mean, that and it is bad for your mental health and all these kind of old school stereotypes that's really become fringe opinion now. That's not really. The mainstream discourse about games now is significantly more positive. If you look at one of the reasons we target Gen Zers, for example, is because the games have become cultural for them. Being a gamer wasn't like it. Me and Hustle is old enough to where being a gamer was an identity. We're gamers. So is Brian. But if you look at Gen Zers, everybody plays games. It's movies, music, clothing, culture, education, how they interact with each other in sports. Like everything is impacted by games, all the way down to the artists they listen to. And so I think games and gaming for the next generation, who is going to be the big adopters, is probably going to be the large driver. And I think that the way that you cause that adoption is just to get them to use it. You don't need them to know what they use yet. Get them to use it first, because that shows them the value. So just like Fortnite was the adopter for the Epic Games Launcher, make a really good game and that the players just want to have. Make a really good collection of game items that the users really want to have. It could be, for example, now I'm going to say something stupid. I don't think it's stupid, but let's say that you created an incredible game collection of weapons or a story attached to a certain item collection that you got multiple games to actually use. Now suddenly you have an item like a Gucci hat, right? You have a Gucci hat that the players want in multiple games, and they can take that with them into that. That's one way. So you can go the collection, so the item into the game's path, or you can create an incredible game that the players just really, really want to play because it's more fun. That's one way to get them to adopt it. And then once you've kind of shown them that, holy shit, like you can use this to just create better products for you, and you have acceptance that it isn't just a money thing, it isn't just a financial thing, it's not just a money grab, it is something that the audiences want, then you can start adopting or spreading the technology into other areas for the same mainstream audience. So I think, for example, one of the places I really want to see blockchain used is actually in medtech. I would love to see, because if you look at the Nordics and a lot of countries, you have your medical profiles, right? And But if you go to a different city and you go to a different country, they can't access your medical profile because it's locked in a system. It's locked by tons of barriers and security barriers in a different place. If you can have your medical profile with you in your wallet as tokenized access to it, then you could create a medical industry that suddenly could access your records anywhere you were if you were sick, creating much less thresholds, much less tension, much less friction between all these systems. It has huge utility adoption that I think is incredible. And at the same time allows the users to take it with them and control who has access to their medical records, for example. But I think in order to get there, you first need to get acceptance that this technology can create great products. And I think games can do that. I think games can 100% use this technology to create a better user experience that players actually love. But I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot when we're trying to tell them that rather than just show it. It's a little bit like me telling you, I'm the strongest man in the street. I'm like, you hear me, but what I tell you doesn't mean anything. What you want me to do is show you. So you go, holy shit, you're strong. So that I don't have to keep telling you the story. I just live up to our promise, right? You just do it.
Exactly. Very, very accurately put. I'm a big believer in the fact that often the product comes first, and you have to sort of present yourself out there to an audience to then win their trust and win their, loyalty to your brand or to your product. I do want to say that we are tight on time because a couple of our guests have to jump off in the next 3 minutes, and we also like to keep these spaces nice and concise so that we have room for further discussions in the future. Just as some closing statements, I guess you could call them closing statements. I just want to say the Spaces was amazing. I have one last question for all of our guests, if you could just answer this, and then also what you are excited for in the future. So looking ahead, what is it that makes you excited about the space going forward with respect to mainstream adoption and also with respect to your own projects and endeavors, starting with Brian, Thomas, and Hustle?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think more than anything, I'm really excited for like true decentralization. I think it's a few years away for in many ways to have complete decentralization. But I've just seen so many screw ups with not even just government, but just look at corporations and how, the black box situation of everything's behind closed doors with, we've seen hacks with LastPass and all these different things where, you don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. And maybe a bad example there, but there's even worse examples where there's no open source, and some of the technology that's happening from this can really create transparency more than anything and decentralization. So I think even beyond the gaming and beyond the assets themselves, I really would think it's going to be a great time to be in this space to see that decentralization truly come to light. And to see some of the transparency that, we didn't learn anything really, to be honest, from the 2008 financial crisis. We're seeing the same patterns over and over again, leveraging out our money, things like that, where it's clear that we just need to, at this point, control our own money with things like crypto. So anyways, to me, it's really about the core ethos of the space more than anything. But I think that obviously there's a lot of industries that can be disrupted in great ways. So yeah. And thanks for having me. I do got to jump off as well, but appreciate it for having me.
Sure thing. It was a pleasure, and we look forward to doing more spaces with you and the rest of the guys in the future. But I do want to move this to Thomas. Thomas, I think you are, to my understanding, you're quite data driven, and you are also very community driven because of the nature of your business. So what excites you? Because I'm sure you hear a lot from people. You hear a lot from gamers. You hear a lot from builders, developers. What excites you going into the future with respect to Wasder and also the space in general?
So what excites me the most is that I think we have a chance to start shaping an industry, a gaming industry that is the big cultural movement of our youth in a way where people can participate a lot more in storytelling and creation and creating more dynamic, interactive player economies, which is something I've loved in games since I was a child. I think this technology allows for that. I think we are going to see some incredible games. I think we're going to see a lot of youth, expressive, creative people and players create their own items and tell their stories through items that are then brought into games, which I think I'm super excited to see it. I think there are some amazing games coming out that are taking that approach. I have obviously have several games that I advise and would love to advise more good games on what I think is needed. So that's what I think from an industrial level that I think excites me the most. I think we can see a more fair, more modern, more up to date, more value driven player economies, business models from games. And if I get to succeed with what we do, and we've 2022 for us was about creating a proof of concept that a product where you can go through the entire player journey in the gaming industry in one application, in one social application, that it was needed. We've proved that we have product market fit. Our metrics are through the roof. Now we're going into a phase where we're going to be the best application in the world when it comes to discoverability and engagement, especially for games. So I'm excited about spending 2023 on helping players discover other players, but more importantly, discover great games, great stories, great products, and participate and play those and enjoy those games. And if I get my way over the next 2 years, we can take that and allow game developers to focus less on having great marketing teams, because we can do that job and that virality job for them, and have them focus on making incredible games and incredible products, which means they can allocate more of their resources to that than having to try to laser target an audience every single day, because frankly it's an unnecessary expense that is there because the industry looks the way it does, and I want to change that. But yeah, so there's both what is actually being built and how it's being built and why it's being built, but also how we can participate in it. And then obviously, thank you guys so much for having me. And I think there are tons of Web3 games that you guys really should take a look at, because it's incredible potential, truly.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I mean, thanks for coming on. Obviously, we're going to keep the space going for a couple of minutes more. We all obviously want to hear from Hustle as well. But I love what you just said, and it must be such an exciting position for you to be in as a CEO, to sort of steer your company in the direction where, I always say to my Web3 friends and people in Web3 in general, that we are at the forefront of a global financial revolution. And I think that stretches further than just the finance. It's in gaming, it's in media, it's in entertainment, it's in content creation. It's a very, very exciting space to be. Hustle, obviously you have a lot of media output, you have a lot of things coming out every day with your own project, with your YouTube, with Crypto Banter. What excites you into the future with the markets, with coins, with games? What is Hustlepedia looking at?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the last thing you said is the thing that would make me the happiest: games, because it's unfortunate that 80% of the games that I show, even if for the early stages that they are, the willingness of these Web3 projects to put out alpha gameplay and show people what they're building, right? And just the criticism in the chat boxes. You can't logically play these games on Twitch and have a great sentiment all the time regarding the game. Like, people want entertainment from the person, but they also want entertainment from the product in the game. So it's really hard right now. And that sentiment, I would hate to keep showing gameplay on my channel, for example, and people just continuously hate on it. So it's ridiculous, even if it's a good early product. Just the sentiment on what these games look like. They want Call of Duty tomorrow. So I preach patience. And then, yeah, just really looking forward to bring more early opportunities to our to our spectrum of crypto gaming enthusiasts and TTOO. We have a lot of gamers, investors, builders. It's a really neat hub for people to be able to actually niche down in one core spot, to have everything at their fingertips. And we have a lot of cool things around the corner. And then our integration with Seedify as well has me stoked. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Thanks for the space, Thomas. And I know Brian hopped off, but absolute pleasure as always. And then thanks for hosting, guys. Always killer spaces.
Well, yeah, thank you as well, Hustle. Thanks to Crypto Shamsi. Definitely give all of our speakers a follow. Shamsi's our man there. He deserves a few more followers. Yeah, my final thoughts here. I would say that, crypto Web3 is a liberating technology. It's, we have this ideal of decentralization and coming out of, having that liberated experience of being able to control our own finances and our own creations and our own assets. And we have to remember that power likes to be centralized, and it likes to secure its own position. And it may see this technology as a bit of a threat at times, you know. So I really do believe that we're getting closer to a time where the technology is going to come through to a point where people can't live without it, where they see the benefits so much and it becomes part of their regular life that no centralized dominant power will be able to discourage people's use of it, because it will be so inundated in what people are used to and what they want. And I do think that gaming and these projects that some of our speakers here are working on, and many others within the Citadel and Neo Tokyo are working on, are going to be a big part of making that happen. So always a pleasure to speak with y'all, and we do hope to see you again. Shamsi, you got some closing words for us?
Yeah, I think that's it. You put it very nicely, and I think we've got a nice, bright path ahead of us as long as we work together, keep the community together, uplift one another, and have more of these Twitter spaces. So, with that being said, thank you everybody, especially our speakers, Hustle, Thomas, and Brian, who's left, for participating in the spaces. We hope to have you again and again and again and again as you progress in your businesses and endeavors. And if you just want to chat, pull up. So thanks to all our listeners. Thanks to Neo Tokyo for co-hosting this with us. And obviously, thank you to Neo Tokyo News. I am Crypto Shamsi, the voice of Neo Tokyo News. Please follow Neo Tokyo News. We have a very bright team of writers, contributors, media creators, you name it. And we'll see you in our next one, which will be another banger. As always, thank you everybody for listening.